the sports culture and its economy. How do our sports teams and the businesses around them influence and build and make cities better and more livable places? Unfortunately, in your program, you have Mayor Jim Gray of Lexington on this panel, but he's having to attend a funeral this morning. Even in his absence, though, we've got an exceptional panel, and I hope you'll welcome them. First, Mark Donovan, president of the Kansas City Chiefs, is with us. From Major League Baseball, Marla Miller sends her regrets. She has a family emergency that's keeping her in New York, but stepping into her place is a man who played a major role in the great success of Major League Baseball's All-Star Game here in Kansas City this summer, Kevin Uhlich, Senior Vice President of the Kansas City Royals. And with a perspective on Major League Soccer, representing the very exciting SportingKC is SportingKC CEO Robb Heineman. Our moderator for this panel is a man who builds sports stadiums around North America and the world, a representative of Kansas City's distinctive and unique sports venue architecture community, Earl Santee, the senior principal of Populous Architecture.
Well, good morning. So our panel topic is the role of sports and sports infrastructure in city building. And today I would like to talk to you about a few questions that we have for the panelists, and then we're going to open up to questions for the audience. Sports teams and sports infrastructure have a tremendous impact on a city culture, their identity, and ultimately their development. The three men with us today, each of whom Populous has had an opportunity to work with over the years, Robb Heineman, SportingKC, Mark Donovan with the Kansas City Chiefs, and Kevin Uhlich with the Kansas City Royals. All these gentlemen are forward-thinking. They have accomplished many things in their lives as individuals and have played and continue to play an important role in Kansas City sports culture. Now today, and before we begin, Mark, as you know, there's been a lot of emotional times here in Kansas City, and the impact on the Kansas City Chiefs and the families of this tragedy, but also impacted the entire community. So if you could you say a few words?
I just wanted to take a moment. We are not yet in normal or a new normal, and you know, being on a panel like this, I feel like it's important to acknowledge the events of this past weekend. And for us to know that the entire organization, from Clark Hunt, the Hunt family, our coaches, our players, our staff, the outpouring of support has been overwhelming, and we appreciate that. The Chiefs family lost 2 members of their family, and our thoughts and prayers are with those victims and the families of those victims. And specifically a focus on a little 3-month-old girl named Zoe, who is going to be in our thoughts and our prayers and our plans for many years to come. I also want to acknowledge the people from Kansas City, specifically Mayor Sly James, and just the unbelievable support that he has provided and that everybody in this town has provided us as an organization. We were talking before the game on Sunday. One of the things that has happened as part of this is we saw another example of what makes this region and Kansas City so special. In times of need, we really do come together. I know we're going to talk about more specific sports franchise and venue issues, but before we start, I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. So today, we will begin by talking about how cities play the role of creating tremendous quality of life for their population. And so for us at Populous, every city, every neighborhood, every sports franchise are unique. They're unique in so many different ways. And there isn't a set formula for how you create sports cities. There isn't a set time. There isn't a set way to finance them. And so it's about partnership. It's about the public sector and the private sector working together and their efforts to make these projects happen and make the quality of life, improve the quality of life in each of these cities. So here are 3 case studies to clarify this point. And we're going to begin with Minneapolis. Minneapolis is a city that is, has seen its good times and bad times. And specific to that was recently in 2010, they opened Target Field. Target Field was a project that was built, it's a 13-acre building built on a 10.5-acre site. But if I said one word to you about that project, it's about connections. You know, it's about how it connects to the community, how it connects to downtown, how it connects to the region. And so it does that by virtue of many things. It says a light rail station on site, commuter rail station on site. There's a bike trail adjacent to the site. It's got skyways that walk to the site. It's got pedestrian activity. So it connects in very kind of deep ways. And the impact of that in its first year was significant. You know, over 3.2 million fans attended the first year of Target Field. The Metro Transit, which is the light rail system they have in Minneapolis, which works extremely well, is up 17%. And this year I heard it's up to 35% more than it would have been in previous years. There is $36 million in new constructions within a 5-block radius of Target Field. Now keep in mind, this area was already developed, so most of this $36 million is converting old warehouses into other uses. And the occupancy in downtown hotels was up 19.4%. So I guess I would say you would measure these connections in miles, not feet, at Target Field and Minneapolis. The next case study is Louisville, and I guess I had to say one thing about it. It's about public-private partnership. It's about how a university and city can come together and create something incredibly unique for them. And so Louisville is thriving with the KFC Yum Center playing host for a number of national events. It's revitalized buildings and businesses and retail and housing development around the arena. It's estimated to generate $2 billion in investment in the area. And last but not least is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a city that I recall going there in 1994 and they would say, why us? Why did all these bad things happen to Pittsburgh, right? And then finally they got this mantra was about, well, why not us? And so they built convention centers, they built sports facilities, they revitalized their downtown area. And for us, I guess I would say it this way, it's about the future of Pittsburgh. And I think that's how we saw it. So in the 10 years that Heinz Field was built, 6.5 million people have attended Steelers games and also attended downtown Pittsburgh. And the impact of that has been $48 million. And the development that's occurred between Heinz Field and the new PNC Park for the Pirates has been significant. There's been more than 500,000 square feet of new office building development. There are currently plans for 7 new office buildings. There's a 170-room hotel, Hyatt Hotel, being built. And there was an amphitheater that's been built just recently. So the impact, not only to the city of Pittsburgh, but the North Shore, into that community, into that neighborhood, has been significant for that project. So let's move on. So it's your turn. I've got a few questions. Hopefully they're easy. So this is open. So gentlemen, how can sports teams and facilities enhance the quality of life in the city and aid in developing the city's identity? It's open. I'll start with Rob.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today. You know, I think for us, soccer is obviously a growing and relatively young sport in the professional ranks here in the United States. And you know, both Mark and I are connected by one really great thing, and that's the great stadium pioneer, Lamar Hunt. And basically what Mr. Hunt had taught us is that, you know, buildings and sports really don't evolve until they have sport-specific assets. And he's demonstrated his pioneership in that realm twice. You know, kind of doing the first single-purpose facility out at the Truman Sports Complex with Arrowhead. And then in Major League Soccer, he built the first soccer-specific stadium in Columbus. For us, we felt as though we had a very leverageable asset here in Kansas City. We have about 130,000 people that play soccer on an annual basis in the city. We're anyway between kind of first and fifth per capita in the country. And we really felt as though if we had a beautiful place to play, whether or not we had just tons and tons of soccer fans going into it, we felt as though we had a real opportunity to convert people who weren't maybe huge fans into big fans. I can give you just a couple statistics to show that I think that's occurred. When we bought the team, we had 486 season ticket holders. We played at Arrowhead Stadium. We averaged about 3,500 on a paid capacity. Today, we have Livestrong Sporting Park. We have just under 14,000 season ticket holders. We'll cap that here in a couple months when we get to 14,000. On an 18,500 seat capacity this past season, we averaged just under 21,000 fans a match. So basically, we had standing room only seats. So, you know, in a short amount of time, leveraging kind of Lamar's vision around sports-specific stadiums, we've gone from something that was not relatively, it was insignificant in Kansas City to something that I think has become a bit of a social phenomenon. So there's no doubt that the stadium development has generated huge interest in the city, and obviously the you know, trickle-down economics associated with it.
Mark, what do you say about that?
I agree. Lamar was a visionary, and I think his fingerprints are really on just about every sport that's being played in America and across the world right now. I think culturally, you know, sports really unite people, and you see it in all three of our stadiums. If you've ever been to Livestrong Park and spent some time in the Cauldron, you know it unites the people who are there. If you've ever been to Royal Stadium and spent some time in the outfield, you feel that cultural unification. And our sport itself really unifies entire regions. I came here in 2009, and our first year we were 4-12. I've been involved in sports for quite a while. I've never experienced 4-12 before, and I remember how frustrating and disappointing that was. And I saw the impact on the entire region. And I talked to a lot of our partners, and I talked to a lot of our sponsors about what it meant to them. And I got a real solid understanding of how that economic impact it has on each one of them. And then the next year we go 10-6 and win the division. And I got to see the reverse and just how powerful our brand is and how powerful the impact is when we're successful. And you know, you can go partner by partner and look at just that economic impact. I'll give you one example of our partners at Hy-Vee. They literally can track our season. They can tell you the record of our year, every year they've been a partner, without looking at the media guide. They look at their weekly sales. And they look at Monday and Tuesday, and they look at Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And they say, if you win, here's what happens Monday and Tuesday. And if you lose, here's what happens Monday, Tuesday. If you're winning, here's what happens Thursday, Friday, Saturday in preparation for a game. So all of those things factor into the cultural impact, the economic impact of being a part of this city.
Kevin, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with both of them. But, you know, sports is really part of the fabric of a community, and it's not just what happens between the white lines. I think the role of a professional sports team, I know with the three teams that you see up here, is to really become woven into the fabric of that community. And you know, we pride ourselves a lot in what we do off the field. And I know all three teams up here play a big role in that in the community. And it's an escape for people as well. I know here in Kansas City, I've spent time with three teams in 36 years. I was on the West Coast with the Angels for 27 years. I was in DC with the Nationals for 2 years. And now into the middle of America in Kansas City. And I can tell you the fan base here is more forgiving than any fan base I think I've ever been around. It's an unbelievable fan base, and the support that they give you here, not only from the fans, but also from everyone that we deal with on a daily basis. The city government here is fantastic, and we'll talk a little bit about what happened during the All-Star Game, but it truly is a partnership. And you don't see that in a lot of cities, and it makes things go a lot easier here in Kansas City, and I think we can do a lot of great things together. But you know, sports, again, a lot of times we get fixated on what happens in football that one day of the week, or in baseball 6 days a week, and there's so much more that happens in and around the team that's very important to a community as you look at the big picture.
Well, thanks, guys. So, next question. Why should the public sector invest in a sports team, their brand, and the public perception? Mark, I'll start with you.
You know, I think it's just good business. If you look at the renovation project we did at Arrowhead, we spent $375 million to renovate Arrowhead. $125 million of that was spent by the Hunt family themselves. During that 3-year period, we generated $354 million of economic impact. We created 11,000 jobs. On an annual basis, we have a $400 million economic output annually. We create 5,000 jobs annually. We generate, just our football season, forget the other events, we generate $10.5 million in tax revenue. So I think there's good business to it. I think you combine that with what we were just talking about, the cultural aspect of, you know, all three of us, while it's not us individually, but it's our brands, I think we really make Kansas City a bigger city. You know, if you look at our comparison from population, if you look at the DMA from media base, we're under 1 million people in Kansas City. There are a lot of cities out there that are under 1 million people who don't have major league franchises. And I think that puts us on a different stage, and I think that impacts us as well.
Good. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think our sports teams make a city major league. I mean, we looked at that very specifically when we bought the Kansas City Wizards, which is what our team used to be called. Of the 5 of us that bought the team, I was the only one of us that had ever been to a game, and I had been to 2. And so it wasn't as though we went into this as just massive fans, but we went into it were big fans of Kansas City. And, you know, again, it was one of the things that we talked to Lamar Hunt about very specifically is, you know, it's a slippery slope if you start losing your major league teams. You very quickly can become just another city in the region. So for us, that was an important thing. And, you know, I just look at the main company that we're involved in as an ownership group is Cerner Corporation here in town, which, you know, employs about 15,000 people worldwide. And if you look at their associate base, which is from 37 countries today, in 36 of those countries, you know, soccer or football is likely the #1 sport. So for us to look at Kansas City as a global city, we felt it was important for Kansas City to play in the world's game. And so, you know, some of those fundamentals, not necessarily just our joy or, you know, huge fandomship of soccer that got us into the business, and we're glad we did it.
And Kevin, you got anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think as Mark says, I mean, it is a business and it's a business relationship. And, you know, that we have about $170 million worth of player payroll that either is through the Royals or visiting teams that come through, and all that gets taxed. You have over almost 4,000 room nights a year during the course of a baseball season that comes with that. So, you know, there are the economics that go along with having a team in your city, but then the intangibles that we talked about just a few minutes ago just adds to that. So it is an equation. It doesn't fit all cities. You know, you could probably talk to economists across the country, and they'll give you all types of observations. But I think the cities that really partner with their teams and work towards some of those common goals, they find it a lot more rewarding.
That's a good segue question. So, Kevin, what are the benefits of working with a city in development process? Can you create a successful public-private partnership?
Yeah, no, you can. You know, just case in point, just this last year, and it's probably the biggest thing that has happened here in Kansas City, at least from a media perspective, in quite some time, and that was the All-Star Game. And that truly was a partnership. You know, we started the project actually back even before I came. I've been here 6 years, and all of it kind of was contingent upon a sales tax vote that happened in Jackson County. And with the passing of that vote, the Commissioner of Baseball said that at some point we will reward Kansas City with an All-Star Game, but he was very evasive about it. It wasn't anything concrete at that point in time. And I came in 2006, and we tried to further those discussions. It kind of got derailed for a little bit because the Boston Red Sox were trying to get it the same year we wanted it. And it was through the relationship with David Glass that he kind of held his feet to the fire, and we ended up getting it. But we couldn't have done it alone. We were pushing from one side, but for us to be awarded the game, we needed to have that cooperation. And Mayor James and his staff, Jay Hodges, Kamiko Gilmore, were fantastic. Troy Schulte, the city manager here. It was about a 4 or 5 month window of trying to put together a bid package. And again, without a cooperative effort with the government here, we couldn't have done it.
Great. Hey, Rob, I know SportingKC has been involved in the community and the children in this community. Can you talk about that role that you all played here and how important that is to the city?
Sure. You know, again, it kind of goes back to our athlete population. So, you know, we have 30 players on our team that come from 16 different countries around the world, and you know, the average payroll in our league is about $160,000 per guy. So substantially less than obviously either of these two gentlemen. And our guys really enjoy getting their face out there. And so, you know, again, when I go back to that statistics that we've got 130,000 people playing our sport in this community, that wasn't necessarily showing up in the stands, right? So when we're averaging 3,000-4,000 people a game and we've got 130,000 people, what's going on there? So for us, it was pretty clear when we bought the team that we really said, and this doesn't maybe sound like a very lofty goal, but we said, hey, we want to be the third Major League sports team in town. We want to try to, you know, get away from all the minor league and some of the other fray out there. And that's a credit to these guys. They have unbelievable, well-established brands, but we thought we could do that through community involvement. So, you know, last year we did about 410 appearances in the community. That's a lot. That's a lot of appearances. And we started what's called the Sporting Club Network, which is really an affiliation between our organization and the youth teams throughout our region. And now in that Sporting Club Network, we've got about 90,000 kids that participate in that. And they're not only in Kansas City, they're in Des Moines, they're in Omaha, they're in Lincoln, Northwest Arkansas. And basically what we do is we share coaching curriculums, so coaching education for club coaches all over the region. We do clinics. We do all sorts of ticket events. We take our players on the road through caravan type events. And what we really try to do is connect with the community. And like I said, the lucky thing we have is we've got a young athlete population who doesn't necessarily have the fame and notoriety of some of the other leagues. So they're much more approachable and they're much more you know, willing to be open access because they don't get mobbed when they go out in public. So for us, that's been a great, you know, kind of defining characteristic of our brand.
Thank you, Rob. Mark, so, you know, we talk about the connection of the sports facilities to these cities and how important they are to the culture and to really these kind of things. It's more about building community. So what's the economic impact of the Chiefs in Kansas City? I mean, how's the impact of having a major sports franchise here? How's that determine I guess the fiscal base for a city?
So I threw some stats at you earlier, and you know, I think one of the things about statistics, as you all know, is you can pretty much create any statistic you want. I will tell you this, that as it relates to the venue itself, we did a massive brand research project this past year, and we asked our fans what was important to them, and what do you, when you think of the Chiefs, what do you think of? And overwhelmingly, there was a position of pride amongst our fan base and amongst this region for Arrowhead. It wasn't about the team, it wasn't about a player, it wasn't about a coach, it wasn't about a president or an owner. It was about the venue. And I worked at the National Football League before I worked for another team before I worked here, and so I got to see all 32 teams. And I will tell you that Arrowhead is iconic. I often say to people from Kansas City who are born and raised here that sometimes you lose perspective on how important that is and just how revered it is across the world, the sports world specifically. And I think that showed itself in the brand research, is that our fans take pride in Arrowhead. It's theirs. It's what they have created, and it's what they celebrate every week. And if you talk to any NFL franchise, they will tell you, I've heard about Arrowhead. I need to get to Arrowhead. It's the perfect combination of community, college atmosphere, and professional sports. And that's something that we try to create policies and opportunities that continue to grow that.
Great. So we've, what's interesting is that many sports franchises have thought about the impact of their buildings, but for each event day, there's an impact that occurs in the building, but also occurs outside the building. So, gentlemen, how has stadium and I'll say stadium design changed to better address the kind of the evolving fan needs and community needs? And can you talk about unique fan environments that you may have in your buildings? And I'll start with Rob.
Sure. Well, obviously, you know, the Chiefs have kind of, excuse me, defined fan experience in Kansas City through tailgating, right? So I mean, our city is known for that. So for us, we said we need to create an experience that goes at least to that level. And I think speaking to Mark's point around stadium design, when we built Livestrong Sporting Park, because of the iconic nature of both Kauffman and Arrowhead, we said, there's a standard here in the marketplace around design and experience that we have to achieve. We can't just be another also-ran type building, or it's going to be very hard for us to ever differentiate ourselves in a very crowded purchasing market. So what we try to do is look at all the different constituencies that enter our building. And we did very deep research with Populous around all this. And we kind of determined 35 different groups. And a constituency could be a 24-year-old millennial, or it could be a pregnant woman. And where are they going to go in the building? What are the sorts of services that they're going to need? How can we create magic moments, and how do we combat tragic moments? The five of us are all kind of Disney disciples by design, so we did a lot as it relates to sweating the details, pushing people out front, end-to-end design, starting with a theme. And so those were a lot of the different things that we did. So if you come to Livestrong Sporting Park today, you'll see a number of different neighborhoods is kind of the way that we address them, all of which have different characteristics for fans that try to address those fans very specifically, so they all feel like premium guests. We always talk about kind of the dirty words of general admission versus premium versus suites, and what we said is we want everybody to have the opportunity to feel as though they own and control the environment and the experience that they enter into when they walk into our stadium. And I think we've done that in a pretty good way so far in kind of what we would call fan experience version 1.0. The most definitive area of our stadium is called the Members Club, and it's where our fan group known as the Cauldron sits. This is a $14 ticket. It's basically an environment where we subsidize all the food and beverage. So you can go in there and buy a 16-ounce beer, a hamburger, and a bag of chips for $5, which, in a stadium environment obviously is very low. What that's done for us is it's created a culture in our stadium that I think is very defining to what we are. It's basically 3,000 seats to the north end, and if you walk into our stadium, those kids are singing, dancing, holding scarves, tweeting about our team basically for a 3-hour period, and it's really created this culture that's very different for us. So, experience was the main theme for us around the building, and it's something that we'll continue to sweat the details on that as long as the stadium's around.
Kevin, what do you have to add to that?
Baseball's, it's a different time than it was even a decade ago. We play 6 days a week, sometimes at home, sometimes 7. And unlike my other two cohorts here, where their events become, I think, a little bit more of an event, we're challenged. We're challenged with the everyday lifestyle of Americans now. People are busy. People are taking their kids to soccer. People have homework. Weather sometimes can be not in your favor. The advent of HD TV and large screens, and the fact that we televise now 140 games of a 162-game schedule versus a decade ago when teams might have only televised 20 or 30 of your home games. So all of that has kind of led baseball teams to go down the road of you need to develop a facility that is much more than just a place to sit and watch a game. And I think that as we undertook this project here with Populous back in 2006, 2007, I think the focus was on that. In past buildings I had been in, things like the kids area was an afterthought. In Anaheim, the stadium was done in 1998, the renovation happened, and oh yeah, by the way, let's put some games here for the kids. Where here at Kauffman Stadium, we had the ability, because of the land that we had, to actually create a destination. And part of that was learning from what was happening downtown. The Power and Light District became a destination and a magnet here in downtown Kansas City. And that's really what we tried to duplicate. We wanted not only the fan that is your diehard that's going to come out any night of the week, no matter what the outside temperature is and what's going on TV and watch you. We needed to collect some of the casual fans, and I think we accomplished that. In the outfield now is a 360-degree walkway that goes all the way around the building, but we have a large kids area, and on any weekend you'd just be amazed to see how young our demographic is skewed now. You walk through the building and we have a lot of young Royals fans, which is, bodes very well for our future. But I think my neighbor probably said it best. Back after the renovation opened back in 2009, he told me he had a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old girl, and for the last decade, when he and his wife were dating, the Kauffman Stadium was the place to go on a Friday night. It was the hangout spot, but it was a lost generation, partly because of the way that we had played on the field, but partly because the stadium had gotten to a point where it definitely needed to have something, a revitalization. And his two daughters, he said, the first year we opened up in '09, it was about All-Star break. He said, they've already been to the stadium 6 times. I don't think they've been to the stadium 6 times in their whole life. And I said, well, they just fall in love with baseball. And he said, no. He says, I'll call them on the cell phone and say, honey, what's the score? And they'll say, Daddy, I have no idea, but we're out here at Rivals and we're having fun. And I think it kind of speaks to what we tried to capture with that type of renovation. And I think that's what you see a lot, I know, in the baseball world.
And Mark.
I know for us, similar to Rob, it was about research and listening. We had the opportunity to renovate this iconic venue, and the idea was, let's keep the sanctity, what's so special about that bowl, but let's add to that all the amenities and make sure that we are competitive with the best in sports. I would cite a couple of examples of things that we've created that the intent here is we all are battling the at-home experience and the man cave and the 70-inch HD and the replays and everything else. You know, if you were at Arrowhead on Sunday and you were there at the end, when our fans really paid tribute to the team for everything they'd been through, you can't do that anywhere else. And that's part of it. The other part of it is making sure that you're creating unique things that you can't get anywhere else. So working with Populous and others, we created a Hall of Honor, which is a very interactive, very special artifact history of Lamar Hunt and the Kansas City Chiefs. And we put it in the concourse, so that when you're at a Chiefs game, you literally are in the working concourse, getting a hot dog and a beer, and you are in our Hall of Honor. That's unique. You can't do that anywhere else. Now, obviously, one of the reasons we did it as well is to stretch that experience 365 days a year. So that's an ongoing, open process during the year when we're not hosting a game. The other thing we focused on, and similar to what Rob said earlier, is making sure that every single fan at every single level was positively impacted by the renovation. And again, listening to what do you need? What would make your experience better? Bathrooms would make the experience better, so we upgraded our bathrooms. But also one of the things we really focused on was gathering areas, places where they could get together on a regular basis and just be fans together. So when you look at every level of the stadium, from the very top, we have our Ford experience level, which is, it's a fun experience to take other members of teams, other NFL teams, and we take them up to the Ford experience. And it's an open area with special concessions, bathrooms, and a very unique view of the field. But it's a gathering area. Anywhere if you sit in a suite, if you sit in a club seat, if you sit in the upper level, if you sit in the 50-yard line on the first row, you can go to the Ford experience and just be part of the fan base. And we bring fans and other executives from teams up there, and they see it, and then we stand and look at the field. And they all say, you know what, it's cool because we're right on top of the field. And then we ask them to look directly across, and they realize they're standing on top of the stadium. They're at the very top row of the entire stadium. Now, before we had built this, that was the worst seat in the house. And now we've created a place that people are actually taking the elevator up to go be a part of this experience. And I think that's important when you're thinking about design and you're thinking about what you need to do for the fan base.
And one last question before I open it up to questions from the audience. So as city leaders, what do they take from this? What do they draw from this conversation? How do they take this and apply it to their cities, and what's the impact of that? So I'll start with Rob to the left here.
You know, I would say if I just look at our personal experience, Mayor Joe Reardon and Governor Brownback took a huge risk on building Livestrong Sporting Park. It's not as evident in Major League Soccer yet that all the economic benefits are going to be there that both these teams deliver. And, you know, I think it's all about looking across the table at your partner and making sure that this is something that both of you believe you're going to be willing to be in for the long term. It's not easy. You've got to have a vision, and it's something that you have to work through, not just on an annual basis, but a day-to-day basis. And we found that partner in our situation, and hopefully they feel the same way. And I think it's truly one of those things that defines your city. There's no doubt that Kansas City is all about its sports teams. Flip on talk radio at any point during the day and listen to the call-in shows, and the amount of passion that this city has for its teams is incredible. And so I just can't imagine what it would be without it. So it's always a risk to make these big investments, but again, if you have the right sort of partnership group, there's no doubt that it's if not the most important, one of the most important things for your city.
And Kevin.
Yeah, no, I echo that. You know, again, it becomes more than just wins and losses and going to see a sporting event. You know, these organizations are all primed to really make an impact in the community. Over the last decade, the Royals, we've donated about $8.5 million to local charities here, and some of these nonprofits, they rely on it. It's almost their yearly budget, and so there are some great partnerships to be had. If you come from a city that doesn't have a major league team, I know a lot of you I met this morning at breakfast have minor league teams. They do a wonderful job at the minor league level. They're very active and very proactive in communities. So I think the important thing is just to make that connection and have that relationship with your team. And I think a lot can happen. You know, it's at the major league level, it's a national byline every day, and it may not be a positive story sometimes, it may be a negative, but it is high profile, and I think that's one of the assets that a major league team can bring a city.
I agree. I mean, I think it's hard to ignore the cultural impact that sports franchises can have on a community. The economic impact is there, but the cultural impact is hard to measure, and I think that's really important to understand. And I agree with Kevin, that cultural impact can be at the minor league level, at the major league level. I think as you go up that scale, one of the things that's critical in my experience to a successful partnership is the understanding by the sports franchises that they are a part of this community. Rob said it about his players. Most of our players don't live here year-round. Some do. But all of our players know it's critical that they're part of this community, and they support it, and they're active in it. And we know that from management, executive, coaches, etc. And I think that really starts to resonate and starts to create even a larger impact with cultural impacts with the organization.
Well, now it's your turn. I'll open up to audience questions. Anybody? Yes.
Thanks. Beth Pickering, Charlotte City Council. Mark, you mentioned the renovation was $375 million. 125, I believe you said, was paid for by Mr. Fund. Question is, where did the rest of the money come from? And what would have happened if we hadn't found the rest of that money?
Well, it's a combination of city, county, state support and a tax referendum that we passed. I don't want to think about what would have happened had it not. You know, the practical matter is that, you know, every major sports franchise that is in that position leverages leverage. I think when you think of the Kansas City Chiefs, it's really almost impossible to think of them being anything else. And that's one of the reasons we renovated Arrowhead instead of building a new building, is that was part of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mentioned it earlier in our brand study, but that was so critical to us and so critical to our fan base that we keep Arrowhead and we renovate Arrowhead versus building something new.
Hi, I'm Danette Robertson. I work for the town of Addison, and we're about 10 miles from Dallas and about 20 miles from Arlington. When you do your economic impact studies, how far out do you go in the region to determine what the economic impact is for, you know, outer ring cities?
As far as we need to go to get the numbers we're looking for.
Another thing you'll find about Kansas City is they're pretty transparent.
Yeah. You know, I think there's all different ways that you can look at it, depending on the sorts of events that we have at our stadium. You know, Mark and I actually co-promoted an event, Manchester United and Kansas City Wizards here in Kansas City, you know, 3 years ago, I think. We had people from 42 states. So, you know, the draws of different types of these events and some of the ones that we have that kind of reach are for example, U.S. men's national team events, you know, some of the big concert festivals we do. So, you know, you can draw from quite a large region. As I mentioned to you before, through our sporting club network, we have affiliations with people in as far north as Sioux Falls, South Dakota, today probably as far south as Tulsa in northwest Arkansas, about as far as we go. So we're much more of a micro-regional brand. I would say the Chiefs and Royals probably draw from a much larger area than that.
Yeah, I mean, we laugh with what Rob said, but it's kind of true. We are regional teams here, and our fan base comes from 6 different states. We have 90 radio affiliates. We do reach up into South Dakota. I don't think we would probably include that when we went to do any of our studies, but it definitely is outside of the KC Metro here. We go all the way down to Arkansas, across over as far as we can get into Cardinal Country, which is about Columbia, and we kind of claim that as our market. But
I just want to touch on something Rob said about co-promoting the Man U game, which I believe is the only time a U.S. team has beat Man U. Is that
Yeah,
right?
the only time.
I've worked in a couple other cities, and I will tell you that one of the things that makes Kansas City special is that we all are friends and we all work together. There are definitely times when we're competing with each other, but that really, I think, impacts and helps us all, because Kevin and I are talking every couple months about, okay, I need help here and you need help here. Rob and I are talking about, well, if we bring this event here, should it be at your place or our place, and how can we work together? And I think that is a true uniqueness about Kansas City that I think impacts us all.
Well, I'll take one more question.
So in the context of, sorry, Matt Staub, I'm from HR Block, I'm also a SportingKC ticket holder.
not a Royals?
So, I won't editorialize, but in the context of this discussion, this conference, what do you guys think about the conspicuous reality of the location of our stadiums in our city and that contribution or lack thereof to the actual physical economic development that would result from that?
So I'll jump in first. I think, as I said before, Arrowhead is an iconic place, and it's not just the building. As Rob said, tailgating, we are world famous for our tailgating. And you really can't have that in a lot of places. I mean, the fact that I will tell you, when I was recruited to come here, one of the first things I looked at was the facility and the space and what we could do with that. So, you know, every sport's a little different. I think you can find case studies of very successful downtown stadiums, arenas, buildings. I know for our sport, where we are and the infrastructure around where we are helps us be successful every single Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I came 6 years ago, and I know that prior to my arrival, back when the vote was passed, I know there was a group that wanted to try and make it the baseball stadium in downtown Park, and it probably wouldn't be fair for me to comment, because I really don't know what went into all the decisions back at that time, but, you know, as Mark says, the Truman Sports Complex is historic. It's been there for a long time. It's got 25,000 parking spaces. To do a renovation versus build new obviously has some economic pluses. And I think it just depends on the environment. You know, you see a lot of new cities that they when they're building a brand new stadium, yeah, they plan it in the middle of downtown, and that's probably a great topic for another panel. But again, we're very happy where we are. Our fans are very happy where we're at. They've been used to coming out to Kauffman since 1973, and it works very well for us.
For us, I'll just say we love our location. Our sport, again, wasn't as mature as the others, so we were really bound to go where we thought we could actually make a stadium deal happen. We tried a number of different locations in Kansas City and spent, millions and millions of dollars doing so. We actually bought a site over on the Missouri side and invested about $50 million in that site, which we're now doing a development because we moved the stadium. But for us, we love the location. It's been great for our fans, and we're just thrilled to be a part of the region. And thank you, by the way. Appreciate that.
And I will say this, that every city is unique. There isn't a formula for where you put stadiums. And as the Chiefs did, the Royals also did, because I was around back in those days, did focus groups. And the funny thing is that the relationship to the buildings are so strong by their fan base. So strong, and especially if they've been around a while. And the relationship that Royals fans had with, at that time, Kauffman Stadium, continues today. And so I think it would have been a much different equation if they didn't have such an affinity for that building. But, and I've done a lot of buildings. Yankee Stadium's right across from old Yankee Stadium. We could have put it anywhere, right, supposedly. but it's the affinity of location and building that makes these communities so powerful together. So with that, I'm going to close. So, you know, what's interesting about franchises and their venues in the cities is that they connect. You know, they are about building community amongst themselves, but also with you all. And they define a community in a very kind of unique way. When they see the Chiefs, they see Kansas City. When they see the Royals, they see Kansas City. When they see SportingKC, they see Kansas City. And the fans and their affinities for those franchises are very different. It's not the same formula that you can just drag from one city to another to come up with the right silly solution, but it's really this partnership. It's really this commitment to these communities to make them the best they can be. And I think that what these three gentlemen have done is impacted, they affected our community in a very, very positive way. And I think that's an important thing to take away from today. And with that, I'd like to thank Mark, Kevin, and Rob for joining me up here on the panel. And thank you for your insights, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.